Hey, Canucks fans, happy Thanksgiving Monday. I hope you're well, that you didn't get too sad last night when I didn't stream for Thanksgiving Sunday, but I'll be back tonight, me and Parker at 10 p.m. tonight for Canucks After Dark, and then my own show, Clay's Canucks Commentary at 11:15 tonight, right afterwards. I hope you can join me for both. The Canucks, like every team, had to announce their opening day, opening night roster, whatever you want to call it, but they're saying their opening night roster on their tweet. Actually, the graphic says opening day. The tweet says opening day. The graphic says opening night. Regardless, it's their roster to start the season, and every team has to do that to ensure that they are cap compliant today. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the Canucks are going to have this exact roster when they start the season on Wednesday night against the Oilers. And I'll explain what I mean. So the Canucks announced this roster of only 22 players. You can have up to 23 players as long as you're salary cap compliant. But the Canucks announced a roster of only 22 players. So up front, 13 forwards: Besser, Garland, Miller, Lafferty, who's going to wear number 18, last worn by Jason Dickinson, Höglander, Suter, DiGiuseppe, Pettersson, Bluger, Beauvillier, Joshua, Kuzmenko, and Podkolzin. I'll get back to him in a second. 7 defensemen: Soucy, Hronek, Hughes, Juleson, Breezeball, Myers, and Cole. And then 2 goaltenders, DeSmith and Demko. So 13 forwards, 7 defensemen, and 2 goaltenders makes 22. They are 1 short of their 23. Now, to do this, they called up Podkolzin from the AHL today, and they sent down to Abbotsford 2 guys that don't need waivers, Hirose and McCord. Both were practicing with the team yesterday, but they are sent down for the purposes of this opening night roster. So I want to talk about Podkolzin. I want to talk about Soucy. I want to talk about what it means for this roster. So Podkolzin, it's a tricky one, and I'm not going to do this justice. I'm going to actually link to an article from Canucks Army that explains it way better than I am going to try and do now for the next minute or so. But in essence, because of Podkolzin's bonus structure in his entry-level contract, if he started the season in Abbotsford, the Canucks would not be able to avail of this kind of pool of bonus money that Podkolzin could achieve this season. So because of that, if he started in Abbotsford, the season in Abbotsford, the Canucks would lose that money, that room, that bonus room, and then Podkolzin, it would be harder for him to get called up. It'd have to be a true injury or a true injury to and like an LTIR injury where there's more salary cap room made. However, if he starts the season with Vancouver, which he will, regardless of not any plays, I'll talk about in a second. Because of that, then the Canucks are able to capture this potential bonus pool of $850,000, and therefore they'll be less prohibitive in bringing Podkolzin up throughout the season. They don't have to wait for an injury that saves, that frees up some salary cap space. They can just bring him up like a regular player, and he doesn't require waivers, which is another added bonus. So again, I'm going to link to a tweet, a blog from Canucks Army that explains it very well, but there are certain advantages to Podkolzin starting the season in Vancouver as opposed to in Abbotsford. So that's the Podkolzin front. However, there's 13 forwards. My guess is Podkolzin could be the odd man out when the season starts on Wednesday, in that he'll be the healthy scratch because you can only dress 12 forwards. Now on D they have the 7 defensemen. And the 7 defensemen, like I said, are Cole, Soucy, Hronek, Hughes, Myers, Breezeball, and Juleson. Carson Soucy likely will not start the season. We saw him get tangled up with the Calgary Flames forward on Friday night, and he's going to be week to week. So we know he's not going to be on the opening night roster, but we also know that they didn't want to put him on long-term injury reserve, because the advantage of putting a player on long-term injury reserve is his cap hit doesn't count against the cap, i.e. Poolman last year and this year, Tanner Pearson last year. But then the disadvantage is you can't play that guy for 10 games minimum or 21 days. And that is basically 10 games is already more than 10% of the season. So for obvious reasons, you don't want to put someone on LTIR if you don't have to. Yes, you can go back and put someone on LTIR retroactively, but that's only if you know the guy's going to be out for more than 10 games. So you can understand why the Canucks don't want Soucy on the LTIR, so they want him on the roster to start the season. And he could come back in a week or a week and a half in 2 weeks, and then you just simply list him as a healthy scratch during that time. However, actually not however. So there are still 6 other defensemen that can play, and it could be Hughes, Hronik, Cole, and Myers, and then some combination of Brisebois and Juleson. Maybe you bring up Hirose or McWard. So kind of all those bottom pairing guys are kind of interchangeable. So let's not worry about who's going to play with who on opening night just yet. But what's interesting is the Canucks, according to Puckpedia, the Canucks opening roster is $2.47 million over the cap with those 22 active players, the 22 that I just talked about, and Mikheyev on injury reserve. So remember, like I said with Susie, injured reserve, you can't play, but your cap hit still counts against the cap. So the Canucks are 2.47 over the cap with Mikheyev on injury reserve. But because Poolman is 2.5 and he'll be on LTIR, basically they're very close to capturing all of Tucker Poolman's $2.5 million. So that's why they did the swap. Not only for Podkolzin for that bonus pool money, but Aman actually makes a tiny bit more. I think he makes more than Podkolzin. I'm going to look it up right now. But in essence, by making the swap, the Canucks are very close to the salary cap and including Ilya Mikheyev. So they'll be able to capture most, if not all, of Tucker Poolman's full 2.5 salary. I'm just looking at it right now. Yeah, Podkolzin makes $925 and Nils Aman makes $883. So actually, the Canucks use more salary by bringing Podkolzin up. So it has nothing to do with saving money. It has everything to do with that bonus pool that I was just talking about. So that's how the Canucks look then for their opening night roster. Now, things can still change. You can still change things all the way up until that day because they don't start the season until Wednesday, whereas other teams start tomorrow, which is Tuesday. But it could very well be these 22 players I just talked about, and you're going to have one healthy scratch up front, which will likely be Podkolzin, and you're going to have one healthy scratch on D, which will be Carson Soucy. So don't be surprised if we see a lineup on Wednesday night that has Besser, Garland, Miller, Lafferty, Höglander, Suter, DiGiuseppe, Pettersson, Bluger, Beauvillier, Joshua, and Kuzmenko as your 12 forwards. And then your 6 D-men of Hronik, Hughes, Juleson, Brisebois, Myers, or Cole. Again, substitute Hirose, McWard for Brisebois or Juleson, perhaps. And then you have DeSmith and Demko as your defensemen. So I fully expect Soucy to be a healthy scratch. I expect Podkolzin likely to be a healthy scratch. And then I expect Ilya Mikheyev to start on IR and Tucker Poolman to start on LTIR. Hope that all makes sense. If not, we'll sort it out on Canucks After Dark tonight at 10 or my own show at 11:15. So in the meantime, let me know your thoughts, any surprises. And yeah, guys like Studnicka, Oman, Hirose, McWard, Wolanin, all not on the open night roster where guys like Pettersson, of course, where guys like Höglander, Podkolzin, Brisebois, and Juleson are.